Where did the penalty kick originate? The strange history you never knew, the whole story. A ball sits on a worn patch of grass 12 yards from the goal. The stadium noise seems to shrink around it. One player takes a few slow steps backward, trying to look calm. The goalkeeper rocks from foot to foot on the line, gloves open, eyes locked forward. For a few seconds, football turns into something almost ancient. No passing triangles, no clever formation, no bodies blocking the view. Just one shooter, one keeper, one ball, and a net waiting behind them. It feels like it must have always been part of the game. But the penalty kick did not come from beauty or tradition. It came from frustration, muddy goalmouths, deliberate fouls, and a version of football that struggled to admit players might break the spirit of the game on purpose. To understand where it came from, the story has to step away from floodlights, slow-motion replays, and perfect green pitches. It has to go back to football when it was colder, rougher, and far less polished. Late 19th century football was still finding its identity. The fields could be heavy with mud. The boots were stiff and unforgiving. The ball could soak up rain until it felt like a dark leather weight. Rules were still being debated in meeting rooms, clubhouses, and arguments that carried on long after the final whistle. In that world, football still held tightly to the language of amateur honour. The game was supposed to be played by gentlemen, or at least by players who respected the idea of fair play even when the match became physical. That belief sounded noble, but it left the game with a very real problem. Close to goal, a defender could stop a dangerous attack with a trip, a hold, or a deliberate handball, and the punishment often did not match the damage. A free kick in a crowded goalmouth was not the same as the goal-scoring chance that had just been taken away. Defenders could pile themselves in front of the ball like a human barricade of wool shirts, muddy knees, swinging elbows, and heavy boots. In that chaos, a foul could be a smart bargain. If the choice was between conceding a near-certain goal or giving away a messy restart in traffic, some defenders had every reason to choose the foul. Into that uncomfortable gap came William McCrum, an Irish goalkeeper and businessman from Milford in County Armagh, who is commonly credited with proposing the penalty kick. His idea was direct, almost brutally simple. If a defending player intentionally tripped, held, or deliberately handled the ball close to his own goal, the attacking team should receive a special kick from 12 yards away. It was not just another way to restart play. It was a public charge written into the laws of the sport. It admitted something many people around football did not want to say too loudly. A player might deliberately cheat to prevent a goal. That is what made the idea feel so uncomfortable. The penalty kick was not only a technical fix, it pushed against the polite story football liked to tell about itself. Many early supporters of the game wanted to believe that serious, intentional foul play was beneath the character of proper players. A rule that punished it so dramatically felt almost rude, as if the law book had leaned across the table and said what everyone already knew from watching crowded goalmouths. Yes, players will sometimes do this when the match is on the line. McCrum's proposal also arrived as football itself was changing shape. The game was moving beyond private schools, gentlemen's clubs, and local traditions. It was spreading through industrial towns, working communities, organised leagues, cup competitions, and packed grounds where spectators pressed close to the touchlines. More people were watching. More clubs were competing seriously. Decisions had to be clearer and victories began to carry more weight. Once winning mattered more, loopholes stopped being accidents. They became tools. A vague punishment near goal was no longer a harmless weakness in the rulebook. It was an invitation. The football field of that period did not look exactly like the clean, familiar rectangle known today. The markings were simpler, and some of the white-lined geometry modern fans take for granted had not yet settled into place. The penalty area and the penalty spot, as viewers now recognise them, were not there at the birth of the rule. The original idea centred on a 12-yard distance from the goal line, not the tidy white dot that now waits in every stadium. Even the referee's authority was still developing. Football had grown out of a world where captains, umpires, appeals and agreed decisions played a larger role, while the modern referee, with full control of the match, was still becoming the central figure. Because of that older setting, the first version of the penalty felt less polished than the ritual seen today. The ball did not yet belong to one fixed mark in the grass. The goalkeeper's position was not controlled with the same precision. The other players were not yet arranged around the clean shape of a penalty box and arc, waiting outside a clearly drawn boundary. It was a rule built in response to a practical problem before the pitch had fully evolved to contain it. Football had created a new kind of punishment, but the stage around that punishment was still being drawn. The pressure for change grew because this was not just an idea dreamed up in a quiet room. The weakness of the old system showed up in real matches. In the early 1890s, football had examples of defenders using desperate handling near the goal line to prevent what looked like almost certain goals. One often cited English Cup incident involved Stoke City being denied after a Notts County player handled the ball near the line, leaving Stoke with a free kick that could not truly replace the chance that had been lost. Stories like that made the old punishment look painfully inadequate. A foul could erase a goal, while the rulebook could only offer a packed scramble in return. That imbalance is what gave Macrum's idea its power. The penalty kick was meant to give back the value of the chance that had been stolen. Not perfectly, not with modern technology or scientific measurement, but in a way everyone in the ground could understand. The attacking team would be given space. The defending team would lose the protection of a crowd around the ball. The goalkeeper would remain, but only as the final obstacle. In a sport built on motion, bodies, pressure, and noise, the penalty created a sudden stillness. When the law was accepted in the early 1890s, football gained a punishment unlike anything else in the game. Other rules stopped play and restarted it. This one changed the emotional temperature of the entire match. Players stepped away. The goalkeeper was left alone. The kicker stood in open grass with the whole weight of the decision placed at his feet. A foul that had happened in a tangle of legs and panic was turned into something everyone could watch clearly. The hidden offence became a public test. Over time, football began reshaping itself around this new rule. The penalty area became a defined zone. The penalty mark became a fixed point. The 12-yard distance remained, and it proved to be almost perfectly cruel. It is close enough that the kicker is expected to score, which makes every miss feel enormous. But it is far enough that nerves, technique, timing, and a sharp goalkeeper can still change the outcome. The goal is wide, but not endless. The ball travels quickly, but the goalkeeper only needs a hint. The angle of the hips, the shape of the run-up, the eyes dropping for half a second, the foot opening at the last moment. As football became more standardized, the penalty kick grew cleaner, stricter, and easier to recognize anywhere in the world. The modern version is wrapped in details that can seem small until a match turns on them. The ball has to be placed correctly on the mark. The goalkeeper has to stay on the goal line until the kick is taken. The other players must remain outside the penalty area, behind the mark, and far enough away that they cannot crowd the moment before it begins. Even the penalty arc has a job. It is not decoration. It is there because every other player must stay 10 yards from the ball, including the ones standing outside the box. Those lines turned a rough early remedy into a ritual of geometry. The box, the spot, the arc, the goal line, the white posts, the stretched net behind the keeper. Together they create a small courtroom inside the match. The foul has already happened. The arguments may have already exploded. Hands have gone up. Players have surrounded the referee. The crowd has made its judgment. Then the noise narrows into one action. The decision is no longer a debate. It becomes a kick. The drama of the penalty comes from how simple it appears. No one needs a complicated explanation to understand the image. One kicker, one goalkeeper, one ball on the grass. But behind that clean picture sits more than a century of adjustments, arguments, and refinements. Debates about fairness, changes to field markings, goalkeeper movement, retakes, encroachment, feints, double touches, and the constant attempt to keep one frozen moment from spilling back into chaos. The penalty looks like the simplest part of football, yet it is surrounded by some of the game's most carefully guarded details. That is why the penalty kick feels both old and modern at the same time. It began as a practical answer to an ugly little problem near the goal mouth, in an era when football still wanted to believe honour could control what happened on the field. In the end, the game needed something more visible. A mark on the grass, a measured distance, and a punishment everyone could see.